Welcome back. MTG Joe here. Today we are going to show you the top performing best standard decks thus far from Bloomburrow. If you want to rank up the ladder quick to Mythic, check out these deck lists. We are going to be looking at Untapped GG, companion tool for MTG Arena ladder play, tracks user win rates, gives us a whole bunch of cool stats. We're also going to, in this video, look at a 111 person tournament to see what deck topped out the tournament in terms of wins themselves. So lots of cool, exciting decks. We got like over a dozen decks that we're going to be featuring today. So make sure to tune in for the whole video to catch it from there. So we're going to start with Untapped data. We're going to look at the popularity of the decks, and we'll look at the win rates from Platinum to Mythic. The ladder is still pretty new in the season, so we'll look at it from there. Link for Untapped if you want to use it is in the video description. I'll timestamp and paste all these deck lists so you can pull whatever deck you want to take to the Arena ladder and try to compete. So starting off Platinum Mythic for the day, Golgari midrange is about 20%. So this is predominantly the Vraska combo, the one-shot Vraska combo. A lot of them are playing it in various Golgari shells. There's kind of different configurations of how people are approaching it. Orzhov is the next highest at 15%. Predominantly bats. There's some like black-white mid-range style decks, but it's mostly the bats deck. Gruul Aggro at 7.2. There's a couple different variations. Gruul can also be, in this case, including the Smuggler Surprise combo deck, so that's something to kind of keep in mind there. Rakdos is 6.6. All the Rakdos Lizards lists that I've seen are sub 55%, so we're not going to be featuring them right now. Mono Black Midrange is about 6. Boros Aggro at about 5. What's really interesting, online you are seeing a lot of Convoke in terms of MTGO, but in Arena it's mostly Mice. The Convoke decks, there's a lot of like 3-mana sweepers I think people are finally picking up, which we're kind of seeing. And then just 5-color domain in mono red kind of wrapping it up. So we see the Golgari deck kind of keeping towards the top, as well as Orzhov picking up. So just looking at the data, we got 24,000 games we're going to be looking at. And jumping in with Arena data, the mono red Rakdos Aggro deck from Best of 1 has actually got one of the higher win rates in Best of 3 as well. Just a very linear deck. So those who are unfamiliar, this one's at 71% over 67 games. This deck is kind of a prowessy shell. You got Slick Shots, Fugitive Codebreaker, Emberheart Challengers. You have the Scamps as well as Heartfire Heroes that can throw their damage to your opponent's face. Some Swifties, and then Callous Sellsword as a way to fling your creatures for additional damage. Kind of doubles up with things like Scamp and Heartfire Hero, which basically deals damage from the fling plus the creature. Pump Effects, Dreadmaw's Ire, Felonious Rage, Bane Splitter, Monstrous Rage kind of all mixed into their Blazing Crescendo. All cards that kind of play into it. 18 lands in this one, or 20 lands, sorry. Mountain, Sulphur Springs, Blackleaf Cliffs. This one, they're not even playing a sideboard, which is kind of interesting. Saffron Olive also played it. Let me pull up his list. So I will pull this up. So same deck, the sideboard here. Some weird cards, to be honest. Skullduggery, target creature you control gets +1 and your opponent gets -1. Not that after all for removal. Might of the Meek for trample effects. Quick Draw for first strike, I guess. And just some weird cards. Shock as removal. War Squeak to get rid of blockers. I'll link this here. You can see to like most of it's just against like creature mirrors. So something like the Boros mirror, you just bring in shocks for like their creatures. Same with the Gruul deck, just bring in things to get rid of the bigger creatures. But this is a deck that if you want to go very aggressive, it's something to consider. If you want to build it a little bit more grindy in terms of your sideboard, you can build it similar to like the mono red sideboard that I had. So Furbrass Forge, you can bring in Obliterating Bolt, War Leaders, Witch Stalker Frenzies, stuff of that nature. Tectonic, there's a Tectonic card, 1 mana, deals 1 damage to each of your opponent's creatures. There's a couple better cards that you can consider with that, but if you just want something to kind of get you very aggressively oriented decks, this is something to check out. From there, we go to Boros Mice, 69%. Nice. So this is build your own Embercleave at home. So with this deck here, you have Mabel. This one, almost 100 games at 69%. Mabel gives your other mice boost in power, gives you very strong equipment that can be targeted, equipped. The equipment cost is also going to trigger Valiant, so things like Emberheart Challenger works. You have your Flowerfoot Swordmaster that gets the Valiant trigger, your Heartfire Hero. Cheeky Mouse can be a Valiant enabler. Raging Battle Mouse lets you kind of target and then gives a Valiant enabler as well. And the Manifold Mouse allows you to kind of build your own Embercleave at home, which is kind of cool. So this is another kind of deck there. It's just a lot of kind of pump effects, strong kind of creatures mixed in. Get to take advantage of Lupin Flower Village for card advantage, and then Rockface Village for haste. Sideboard, Braids for just catch-all removal for 3 damage, as well as Artifact Hate. Get Lost as a way to destroy like bigger things, stuff of that nature. Case and Forge for the grindier matchups, and Frenzy as some more removal. You might want to look at, depending on where the meta kind of goes over time, Rest in Peace is a card to consider. So then we have Gruul. So this is a different take of Gruul, a little bit bigger. Normally you see like the Slick Shot Gruul kind of effects. So you do have elements of that between Emberheart Challenger here, like your Heartfire Hero, some of the pump effects. You have Paw Patch Recruit in this version here. 2 bodies for the Offspring effect. Manifold Mouse, again, Double Strike or Trample. This version's got Voldaren Thrill Seeker you can throw at things, Tumblewag as a way to put counters on things. This one I'm a little bit more skeptical on, to be honest. I don't think the Tumblewag's like a playable card. It's 3 mana 2/2 that just dies to cut down before you do anything. But you also have like Hunter's Talent that deals damage. It's like a fight effect that I think could be enabler for trample and card advantage. Innkeeper's Talent, another way to put counters on things, give ward, those types of effects. So it's just kind of a pump value kind of engine with counters theme. The one thing that I will note, you're playing 7 pseudo colorless lands with a bunch of like 1 color pipped cards that could present a problem. You also don't share many creature types, so you have like Vampire Warrior, Brushwag Mount. This one's a Mouse Warrior, Soldier. I think Warriors might be the most common, so you'd name Warrior. Warrior or Soldier kind of mixed into there. Sideboard, pick your poison, very strong sideboard card. Braids, Brotherhood End. So against like below to the ground, kind of go wide decks, you can bring Brotherhood's End. Sharpshooter, Artifact Enchantment Hate, Forge for kind of value. The Rampaging Raptor is an interesting one, but I don't think this card's playable for the most part. Sunspine Links is something I'm interested in trying out against like the Domain kind of life gain Bats deck. Anything with greedy mana base, if you can have like a 4 mana deal 5, shut off their life gain, seems like a pretty good value. I'm also interested to see the Ridgeline. This one's got a little bit more too, so you can play on turn 2, but I don't know how much you want to tap land in the deck. From there, we go to Mono Black. One general comment that I've been looking at Mono Black decks for the last 2 days for the videos, play more than 22 lands. These decks should probably be 25, maybe 26. The amount of Mono Black decks that I've seen with 21 to 22 lands that are trying to play like Aklizots or like a number of 4 or 5 drops is like, you'll hit land drops. You can play your cards. You can put out all the cool cards in your deck, but if you're never going to hit your mana, you're never going to win. This version here is not all in discard, which I think is the correct line, just kind of like mid-rangey. You do have the Bandit's Talent as a discard effect. You have Ruthless Negotiation in that regard, Cut Downs, Go for the Throat, Shieldred's Edict, Broncos, Deep Cavern Bats. You may want to kind of trim the edicts down and then play a couple more cut downs. Creatures, Lilies. I don't think 4 Shieldred's where you necessarily want to be on the format. Hostile Negotiator might be a little bit better. There's a lot of the decks are pretty fast or linear, or there's just a lot of Go for the Throats going around where, yeah, if Shelly sticks around, you could win, but it's not guaranteed to stick around. Aklazot's in here, Flesh Gorger. Flesh Gorger can kind of trigger off the Bronco, but also give you another 3-drop in the spot. Hopeless Nightmare, just more discard effects. I'd probably just play Duress over this, to be honest. More dedicated discard is more important, I would say, post-board than giving your opponent the choice. Hostile Negotiations. The End, kind of catch-all piece. Deadly Cover-Up, Sweeper, Gix Command Sweeper, Cruelty for the Grandier mid-range matchups. Rotten Mouth, I don't know if this is necessarily the card you want in like the sideboard. I can't see what matchup you're bringing this in. You also don't have a lot of sack fodder. So often this is going to be, 4 to 6 mana, somewhere in that range. Usually in these decks you have the Nightmare's main, and then Breach the Multiverse, I guess, for the kind of mid-rangey. Sideboard's a little all over the place, to be honest. Golgari combo time. So 66%. So for those unfamiliar, the combo itself, if you have Innkeeper's Talent at level 3, it doubles the amount of counters that come into play. So basically it's like doubling season. So you play Vraska. Vraska comes in with 10 to 12 loyalty, depending if you play for 5 or 6 mana. You -9, your opponent gets 18 poison counters, they lose the game. So this version here, just a bunch of removal, kind of mid-range threats. You should be playing 4 Mosswood Dread Knights, probably over the Keen Eye Curator, to be honest. I would cut these 2 Keen Eyes, play the 4th Innkeeper, play the 4th Mosswood, kind of mixed into there. Just various removal spells kind of mixed into there. Shellys, Analyze the Pollen, and Pillage the Bog can both help you find your combo pieces. Sideboard, cut downs, just kind of Graveyard Hate, different sweeper style effects. Aqualizots for the Grindier matchup. Gruul Claw Heist is kind of hand hate, kind of mixed into there. Fountain Port is a card you'll see in a lot of these mid-range decks now, just another utility land adjacent to kind of Murex in that effect. You then go to Domain. So Domain is still around. Mana base is a lot worse, but they're trying, Jennifer. They're trying. Ancient Cornucopia is one of the enablers of the deck now. Gains you a bunch of life. Why are you not showing up? So every time you cast a spell, once per turn, you can gain life equal to its CMC. Helps you also kind of ramp ahead. So something like Lightning Helix gains you 5 life, which has got some utility. That keeps you alive a little bit longer. Love your Archangels, Leyline Binding, Sunfalls. This version's on Temp Lockdown main as well. Some Beanstalks for card advantage, Win Conditions, Atraxas, Herd Migrations, Archangel, and you have a Jason here. Notably, no Myrex in the mana base. Some Caverns, Fabled Passage. So you're still playing the basics, but you're just playing Surveil lands instead. More removal, Graveyard Hate against the discard heavy decks or aggressive decks. You have Baloth, and then the grindier mid-range decks you have Nissa Ascendant in there. Orzhov Bats, Orzhov mid-range, whatever you want to call it, 65%. So it's a life gain synergy deck. So Case of Uneaten Feast gains you life, kind of Soul Warden style effect. You have Amalia's in here, Essence Chandler as a new kind of Johnny's Pride mate. You got Deep Cavern Bats in here. Zorlin could rebuy you stuff, gains you life. Gumdrop Poisoner could be removal. Darkstar Augur is card advantage engine as well. So with this deck here, you want to kind of gain and lose life proactively. Lunar Convocation drains, creates bats, and can be a mana sink to draw you cards. You also have like the Essence Chandler when you lose life. This will allow you to get flying or vigilance. So you see those effects. You'll notice that there's a few more pain lines in this deck. That allows you can pay life to generate color to trigger these effects. So that's another way to kind of do it that way there. A sideboard, various removal options, Invasion for hand tape, Pest Control versus Convoke. In the grindier matchups, you got another Darkstar. Gix as for card advantage, Gumdrop is removal, Zorlin for grindier matchups, 3 Aqualizots. Probably seems a little bit much. Maybe just another removal option could be reasonable. They're legendary. They're good against, like in the matchups, they're good, but playing 3 might be a little too much. And go to mono green, 65%, just a shade under. So we're allowed to play Forest again. Still dice to Sunfall, but we got some good cards in here. So Evolving Adaptive gets bigger as you play bigger creatures. Paw Patch, 2 creatures in 1, thanks to the Offspring, and lets you distribute counters as your opponent starts removing your threats. Hard Hitting Question is a fight removal that doesn't actually fight, just deals damage. So it plays well into things like Death Touch, like Shieldred, where you wouldn't lose your creature. Flourishing Bloomkin, 2 mana, 2/2, 3 mana, 2 mana, 3/3. As the game kind of goes on, the more forests you have, the bigger it gets. You have the Hunter's Talent and the Innkeeper's Talent, the class cards in here. Keen Eye Curator, 2 mana 3/3 that can exile cards from the graveyard. Once you have Domain kind of exiled with it, it becomes a 7/7 Trampler. Sharp-Eyed Rookie gets bigger as you play bigger things and gets you some card advantage through the clue tokens. Bloated Contaminator can proliferate counters. Outcaster Trailblazer for card advantage, and then Sharpshooter as another 4 power 3-drop that can also incidentally blow up artifacts and enchantments. Sideboard, Tail Swipe as more removal. You have Paw Patch Formation. I would just play Pick Your Poison probably. I think that's a better card. It's 1 cheaper. It does similar effects and can also hit artifacts. Filigree Silex for token matchups. Black-blue decks, you can bring in Sandstock Moloch. Sort of once and future against the heavy removal decks and the heavy discard decks or aggressive decks. You also have Obstinance Baloth. Moving on, we keep going, folks. 59% for Gruul Surprise. This deck here is looking to use Smuggler's Surprise to put 2 creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. You can also kind of self-enable the mill part for more mana. This deck here is looking to put into play Calamity, Galloping Inferno, and something like a Terror of the Peaks or Voltborn Tyrants. Then the Calamity copies it, and then you make attack and you make more copies of it. You can also do like Trumpeting Carnosaur to cascade. Roxanne helps you ramp and can be removal. Brotherhood's End in here as a sweeper for the aggressive decks. Glimpse the Core helps you ramp. Outcaster Trailblazer, you can plot this on 3, play it on 4, and then that gives you your 5th mana to play one of your 5 drops in the deck. Sideboard, Pick Your Poison, just various removal options. Graveyard Hate. The Krenko's Buzz Crusher can be brought in against like greedy mana bases to get rid of creature lands, but I don't think it's as relevant in Standard as something like Lotus Field is in Pioneer. Baloth for heavy discard decks. Tyrannix Rex for the heavy counterspell. Then we go to Izzet Artifacts, 57%. So this is a synthesizer deck. Synthesizer decks wants you to play artifacts with 3 CMC or more. That allows you to create constructs, creatures that are 0/0s that get +1/1 power based on the number of artifacts you control. So you have things like Braided Net as kind of control elements, Cryptic Coat, Grand Spider helps you ramp. The Power Stones can be used in this deck to help you ramp for a bunch of things. Iron Crag as a ramp effect, Legion Extruder as removal that can then turn your various Power Stones into golems. Torch the Tower is removal, 3 steps ahead is copy, like just flexible. Counterspell, if you could copy your creatures, stuff like that. Time Explosion as a sweeper, Mightstone, Meekstone, removal, card draw, and then can be ramp. Skitterbeam Battalion is kind of your top end with the Cityscape Leveler. Uamori Vault as a kind of card advantage engine as well. You can name Construct, I think is the most common here with the, Spider or Construct, kind of with your Cavern of Souls. Sideboard, counterspells, sweepers, Imidane's Recruiter against like the mid-rangey decks. You can kind of set up where generate a bunch of mana and then just play out big creatures like in a turn and then haste them out. Tishana's Tidebinder for activated abilities, kind of tempo elements, Witch Stalker's removal, Chimley for the grindier matchups as well. Then Grixis, this is basically blue-black Ral. This was a deck that was in the first MTGO dump, mid-rangey control deck. So you're using Ral as your win condition predominantly. There's a couple others in the deck, but makes you otters, draws you cards, and then can emblem and give your instants and sorceries have Storm. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you get to put a loyalty counter on Ral. There's also Thundertrap Trainer. This is Augur of Bolas that can be offspringed. So you get to choose a non-creature, non-land card from the top 4, put into your hand. Otherwise, there's a lot of interaction. Cut downs, Phantom Interference, 3 steps ahead, Bitter Triumph, the Deuce, Go for the Throat, Long Goodbye. Just tons of removal, Deadly Cover-Up, Virtue Persistence all mixed into here. You have a Preacher, a Shieldred, and an Aclazotz as well in here. Graveyard Hate, Big Thing counters, more removal in here. Outrageous Robbery for the grindier matchups. Glistening Deluge, Malicious Eclipse for the go-wide decks, Preacher for the mid-range decks, and Tishana for activate ability. Say opponent tries to activate Vraska. Flash that in, boom, you deal with Vraska for a turn. If they want to do Leyline Binding, if they want to do Atraxa, ETB, any of those things get in that respect. Now, moving on, there was a 111-person tournament. We had the Izzet Explosive experiment event. So this one here, 111 players on MTG Melee. It was won, I believe this was in Japan, if I'm not mistaken. So it was won by Mono Red, but Midrange. So this deck here, we have Hired Claw in here. We have Charming Scoundrel, Sunspine Lynx, Grabby Giant for its treasure token mode. We have Monastery Swiss Spear, full Urbrass Forge main. You have the 12 removal spells between Shock, Lightning Strike, Obliterating Bolt, Scorching Shot, and then 3 Koth Planeswalkers, 18 lands, 18 mountains, Fountain Port, and Mishra's Foundry in here. Sideboard has Brotherhood's End, Emberheart Challenger, I guess if you want to switch to a more aggressive plan. Jaya's in here for the grindier matchups, more removal, more Koths, so just very interesting build of mono red here. The Lynx kind of taking advantage of life gain and just greedier mana bases. So we had that deck, we had an Azorius Control-ish shell. So this one here was another one that was using the synthesizer, this one going white instead of red, and a little bit more controlling. Clayfire Bricks as a way to ramp or find lands. Your Braided Nets, 2 Chimley in the main, No More Lies, 3 Steps Ahead, Farsight Rituals, kind of the new Memory Deluge, Lay Down Arms, Sunfall, all kind of mixed into here. Lockdowns in here, Ezram is kind of a big, like all these control decks usually have a big life linker kind of style strategy. Lauren, rest in peace. Beza's in here. So a bunch of different threats of the post sideboard matchup. So I'll link this entire tournament so you can see any of the decks. There's Convokes, there's Bats, there's Ramp, the Golgari, the Abzan decks, kind of all mixed into there. Runeclaw decks kind of mixed in. You can take a look and see if anything jumps out to you. So that is it for the week. Let me know what you think. If you enjoy this type of content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.